No more Mr. Nice Guy, magic mushrooms, Nottingham, and so much more right now.
The Remarkable People Podcast. Check it out. The Remarkable People Podcast. Listen, do, repeat. For life. The Remarkable People Podcast.
Hello, my remarkable friend. Welcome to this week's episode of the Remarkable People Podcast. What we do here, if you're a new listener, is we not only share the story of our guests, but we break down along the way, not just what they overcame or achieved, but we break down the successes and the practical steps of how they did it so you and I can too. At this time today, we have Allie West. Allie West talks about suffering trauma early on in his childhood, how circumstances made him more on the timid side, but he learned as he got older, and he's going to help us. No more Mr. Nice Guy kind of syndrome. He's also going to talk about his awakening and how he even used plant-based medicine to help him with that. Not that I or he recommends that for everybody, but it's just the journey he took. He talks about a little growing up in Nottingham. Yes, Nottingham, like Robinhood, right? Great place. And then he goes into starting as a physical trainer, and then he got his own gym, and then he left it all. And now him and his new wife, or his wife, not new wife, but him and his wife, I say new because they're recently married the last few years, and they're traveling nomads, and they're traveling the world while they work and coach. And his episode has a ton of practical value. So get your pens and paper ready, take the notes, enjoy the episode, but most off, like our slogan says, don't just listen to great content, but do it, repeat it each day so you can have a great life in this world and eternity to come. Check out our website, check out other episodes, check out our book. Please like us. Please give us 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts and on other social media platforms. If you can't, if you're like, Dave, you stink, man, but tell me why privately. Shoot me an email through our website, davidpasqualone.com. We're going to do everything we can to make this the best podcast possible. But if you're one of our listeners in our remarkable community around the world, over 110 countries, we're in the top 2% of podcasts because of you. Thank you. Thank you wherever you're listening to this. But please share it with your friends and family, like it, rate it, review it, subscribe to our channels. And it's not so we can be popular. It's so we can be popular, so more people find us, so more people get help and grow and thrive, and we can all have success and celebrate together, right? Help each other grow, love and glorify each other, love and glorify God. That's it. So at this time, Allie West is going to take it away and share with us a whole bunch of gold. Enjoy. Hey, Allie, how are you today, brother?
I'm doing great, man. How are you?
Man, I'm fantastic. I was just telling our global community a little bit about you, and they're pumped to hear your episode. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with your story from birth, literally through to today. Then after we hear your story, the highs, the lows, the everything in between, and the practical steps of how you achieved and overcame what you have in life, then we're going to transition into where's Allie today and where are you heading? So after you've helped us, how can we help you, my friend? Sound good?
Sounds amazing. Let's do it. I'm excited.
All right, man. Yeah. Before we start, though, I always ask guests the same question. We have listeners who've been with us for 3 years and listened to all 150 plus episodes. We have people listening for the first time all over the globe. If they listen to your episode, they're going to get a ton of gold along the way. But if they can count on one thing that they're going to learn from this episode, what is that? What's your passion to teach them?
Simply being yourself and being present.
That's huge. So let's get into that. Being present is very, very true because you can physically be there, but not mentally or emotionally. So, Allie, let's start at your birth and bring us through today. Being present, super important to you. It's your passion, it's your mission, it's your calling, it's what you tell people. How did that come to be? So let's start off. Where were you born and what was your upbringing like?
Yeah, let's do it. I was born in Nottingham in the United Kingdom in England. And it's in the middle of England, about 2 hours from London and an hour from Birmingham. And as far as I'm aware from information I've received from my parents and particularly my mother, I had a pretty traumatic birth. My mum was in slow labor for about 38, 40 hours, and I didn't want to come out. And I think early on, that caused a lot of trauma in my life from that immediate moment of coming into this world. And it kind of made a little bit of an odd relationship with my mother in my early years. Growing up, though, I had an incredible upbringing. My parents were amazing. They always pushed me to be the best version of myself and to really strive to be great. And I grew up around a lot of positivity, which for a lot of people, they don't have that. So I was quite blessed from a young age to have a lot of positive elements from my parents. They said, you can do whatever you want. You can be whoever you want to be, which was super positive. I have a younger brother who's 3 years younger than me, and we used to fight a lot. We didn't have a great relationship growing up, and that started to improve, but not until really into our teenage years. So junior school was interesting for me. I was bullied a little bit, and I never really felt like I fit in there. And then when I went to what we call secondary school in the UK, I went to a school where none of my friends from junior school went to. So I was thrown in at the deep end, and I had to almost come out of my shell and to some extent change my identity to fit in with the, in air quotes, cool kids. But I absolutely loved secondary school. I loved the education. I loved the friends that I made. And it was a really great time at secondary school. And I really felt like I stepped into being more of an outgoing person, because when I was very younger, I was very much shy and introverted. But my passion...
Before you go on,
sorry.
do you remember? That's such a tough time for most teenagers, right? Or children and teenagers, growing into teenagers. Do you remember what you did or what changed to help you become more outgoing and less introverted?
I think I just put myself out there. I found a group of people that I enjoyed being around, and they were probably a bit different to me. They were more outgoing and I suppose more mischievous, but I felt like that was the kind of people that I wanted to be around. But as I've learned now, as I'm older, I was somewhat of a chameleon, and I was until into my adult life, which we can come on to later. And I had this almost disassociation, but it was a good and a bad thing. It was a double-edged sword because it allowed me to make friends with very different groups of people. So I was very much with the cool kids all the way through what you guys would call high school, but secondary school here. But I also was friends with, I shouldn't really say this, but like the more geeky kids and the educated kids. And like I could move in these different circles because I had this ability to like almost change my persona and change who I was. So I fitted in with a lot of different groups, which was very, very interesting, but also caused a lot of issues going into my adult life, which is why I said right at the start, it's all about being yourself, because for a long time in my life, I wasn't myself. So secondary school was really cool. But then when I was 13 years old, I had quite a traumatic experience in my life. I had a cousin who was 5 years older than me, and he was more like a brother than a cousin. And at that time, for about a year before, he'd moved in with my family because his mum had kicked him out, and he was living with me in my bedroom. So I was on the top bunk and he was on the bottom bunk, and we just got on so well. And he was somebody that I looked up to and I admired. He inspired me, pushed me. He was just an amazing person. And when I was 13 years old, I got like a really tragic phone call and found out that he'd been killed in a road traffic accident, and he was only 20 years old. So it was just like it was like a really crazy time I've got the timelines wrong there. I was 14, sorry, not 13. So 14. And he just turned 20. So like devastating moment. And at 14 years old, you don't really know how to process death and trauma, especially someone that you see as a brother and a loved one. And that was just really crazy time for me. And I almost went off the rails probably for my last couple of years of high school. I was drinking and getting myself into trouble. I was down to get straight A's, and I still got good grades. I came out with a few B's and some C's and I think a D. But before that accident and before that trauma happened, I was down to get like straight A's. So that was a really kind of interesting period as well. But all my life growing up, all I ever wanted to do was be a footballer, or soccer, as you guys call it. So that was my passion growing up. I just put all my heart and soul into playing football, and I was good at it. I did quite well. And when I left school, I got into an academy, and I was playing a good level of football, and that was going really, really well. And at 19, I had another traumatic moment. And I think this is the first one in my adult life that led me into my whole life now. When I was 19, I tore my cruciate, my anterior cruciate ligament in my left knee. And for people that don't know about anatomy and physiology, that's the ligament that governs all lateral, which is sideways, and all twisting movements, all rotational movements. So without it, you can't really play any sports, whether it's football, basketball, rugby, American football, whatever the case may be. I tore that. I was out of the game for about 2 years. I had reconstructive surgery. And when I came back into the game, I could never get back to the same level. A lot of things had changed. In football, there's a lot of clickiness and a lot of politics. And I never got back to the same level. And at 20 years old, I was at crossroads in my life where I didn't know what I was going to do, because all I ever wanted to do was either play football or coach football. And it wasn't really working out. And randomly, a friend said to me, have you ever thought about becoming a personal trainer? And I was like, no, I've never been to a gym. I don't know anything about health and fitness. And she was like, well, it might be something for you to look at. I did a 2-week intensive gym instructor's course. And then I managed to secure myself a job in a health club, like a big chain health club over in the UK, sorry. And I did that for 3 years, ran my own personal training within the health club. And after 3 years, that was 2008 till 2011. 2011, I went out on my own, set up my own personal training business for 5 years, did that for 5 years. And then in 2017, I opened my own gym, which I ran for 5.5 years, which brings me to September last year. I closed my gym and left the UK, and I'm currently in Mexico, and I'm traveling the world and working remotely. So that was just a whirlwind of my history, and we can go into any of those bits and pieces, and I've probably missed some bits out, but there's 5 key moments, I think, in my adult life that I'll mention to you now. And if you want to dip into any of them, you can. The first one was that injury that I told you about when I tore my cruciate. The second one was at the end of 2014 when I ended a 7.5-year relationship. I had a mortgage with this person. I ended the relationship and stepped away from that, and ended up staying on my mum and dad's sofa for 3 months. And then in 2015, I had a huge moment where I went to Sedona in Arizona, and I found spirituality, and I had what can only be described as a spiritual awakening. And then the fourth one was opening my gym in 2017. And then the last big moment was what happened last year when I closed my gym and decided to travel the world and work remotely. So we can go wherever you want to go, David, after that.
Yeah, no, I mean, we have episodes that are short. We have episodes that are long. The average episode is 1 hour and 15 minutes. So let's just see where it goes. My first question is this. During your life, there's a point in everyone's life where we have to face the past, and then in order to heal and move forward. With the loss of your cousin, who was like a brother to you, when did you face that? At what point in your life did that resurface so you could address it and move on?
That's a really interesting question. I think when I went to Sedona and found spirituality, and again, in air quotes, I think that really allowed me to process all of that. And that was like 13 years later, 14 years later. I think that allowed me to compartmentalize it and to heal from it, because I think I'm a very I'm a very protective person. I'm a very caring person. I've been known to put other people before myself, and I never really healed and mourned the loss of my cousin. So I think after that experience, it made me realize that I could let a lot of that go and I could heal and process that trauma, and I didn't have to take on other people's pain. I guess that's the way I can explain it. And then through all the work that I've done from 2015 to now, the last 8 years I've spent working on my own self, my own mental well-being, physical well-being, spiritual well-being, emotional well-being. I've took my own self-development really seriously in the last 8 years. And I think all of that work has allowed me to process that as well. Also, I don't know if you wanted to get into this, but I've done a little bit of plant medicine as well. And that plant medicine has probably helped me process that trauma as well. So there's a few moments, but I think the big one was that point in 2015 when I went to Sedona and my whole life shifted really.
Yeah, no, we want to talk about the things like everybody's life's different, but there's a lot of foundational things that work for us all. There's always foundational truth, but then there's things like exercise. If you're depressed, for the majority of people, it may not cure it, but it helps it. So when you were mourning the loss of your cousin, you said it really was the catalyst, I guess, at that spiritual retreat in Arizona. And then you said exercise and different things you changed in your life and your habits. And you said plant medicine. So I'm assuming what in America, weed, marijuana, is that what you're talking about?
More so magic mushrooms.
Magic mushrooms. Okay.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
talk about that. What introducing yourself, I'm not going to lie to you. I know very little about mushrooms, and I know that people can take them and they say they have experiences and they feel connected. I know other people like it's like a nightmare. So what kind of mushrooms did you take? What kind of experience did you have? Is it something you recommend? Is it like, hey, I flipped a coin, I got lucky? Talk about your journey, Ali.
Yeah, I think before I get into that, I think I'll talk about the Sedona experience before that, because I think that pushed me into these different avenues of plant medicine and breath work and maybe more spiritual practices, meditation, which has been a huge game changer for me. So when I went to Sedona, I didn't know anything about spirituality. I didn't know anything about meditation. I just went to visit my friend who was living in Scottsdale, Arizona at the time. And it was his birthday, and I'd just come out of this relationship 5 months earlier that I mentioned, where I was with someone for 7.5 years, and I left that relationship, moved out of the house, moved in with my parents.
Well,
So
let's go
it
back
was
there.
like,
That's a big part of
yeah,
your life.
yeah, it was a huge part.
What
huge
brought
part.
you? Yeah, that's why I said we usually go chronologically. So for our listeners, my bad. Don't blame Ali. It's all me. But what happened in the relationship? You usually, if you're with someone for 7.5 years, either something dramatically changes, or you realize the whole time you've been going through the motions, or maybe you weren't ever fully into her and you were just trying to please her because you were a pleaser. So what was your scenario to stay 7.5 years and end it?
Yeah, you just smashed it. You just hit the nail on the head with the second and the third one, definitely. Going through the motions, absolutely, and not being into that person, and also, yeah, pleasing. That has been a big issue for me. My whole life is trying to be a people pleaser, and that's something that I've had to work on a lot in the last few years to overcome. So yeah, I realized probably a long time before the end of 2014, it's probably a couple of years before, I realized that me and this person were just coexisting. We weren't really in a loving, beautiful relationship like you think or you want a relationship to be. So I made a conscious decision around Christmas time, New Year, which is probably the worst time to end a relationship, at the end of 2014, that I was going to end the relationship. And this was really difficult for me because I'd been in a couple of relationships prior to that, and the other person had always ended the relationship. So I had to do a lot of like thinking about it and soul searching. But I decided it was the best thing, not just for me, but for both of us. So I just had it out with this person. I just thrashed it out and I just said, look, I don't think it's right anymore. I don't feel like we're in a loving relationship. I feel as if we're coexisting. We've got our separate lives, and it's not how it should be. And obviously, it was heartbreaking for her, and it was really tough because I didn't think she expected it. But I knew deep down that I was making the right decision. And the best thing for me at that time, and it's different for everyone, but the best thing for me was to take myself completely away from that relationship and just go and move back in with my parents. So I left her in the house. I still contributed towards the bills, but I went and slept on my mum and dad's sofa for at least like a month. And I think then they moved me into my dad's office. And I was sleeping like on a camp bed. And it was just like a really like crazy time. And I was lying there. I remember lying there on my mum and dad's sofa thinking, have I made the right decision here? But I knew deep down when I asked myself in my heart that I had. And at that time as well, just at the beginning of 2015, I'd my now wife Sarah, and we hit it off straight away. I think I was out of that last relationship like maybe like a month or two, met Sarah, or I knew her from before, but we kind of got together, had a coffee, and then we just hit it off. And I knew straight away that Sarah was the person for me. She was almost like, in air quotes, a soulmate. So we started seeing each other. After a few months, I moved in with Sarah. And then I think I'd moved in with Sarah a month, and I went to Sedona and met my friend, and he said, oh, we're going to go to Sedona. And I was like, I don't know anything about Sedona. He's like, oh, it's a magical place. There's energy there. There's vortices. People have said they've seen aliens there. I was like, okay, whatever. So we went into Sedona. Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you're in the UK, America, or Antarctica. Everybody's hooked on aliens, right?
Exactly. So he took me to Sedona. I think we went for 2 nights or 3 nights, and we did some hiking, and we hiked up a few of the rocks. And then we sat down on a rock, and he said, Ali, do you want to do some meditation? And I looked at him like, I don't know about meditation. I don't know what to do. I don't know anything about it. He's like, don't worry, I'll guide you through it. So we sat there, closed our eyes, and he took me through this meditation. And it was just the most incredible, magical experience. I felt just so present, so overjoyed, so happy, so grateful. I felt like this rush of energy come into me, like this beam of light come into me. And it was just like incredible. And I came out of it and I said to him, that was amazing. He was like, wow. He said, you must be really responsive to it. So we did a little bit more hiking. And then on the second hike, we came back down Cathedral Rock, and we sat halfway down. And my friend Paul said to me, do you want to do a second meditation? And I was like, yeah, I really enjoyed the first one. So we sat down and we did this second meditation. And this was the crazy stuff. I started getting almost like clairaudience voices coming in. I heard Sarah talking to me from the UK, and she was back in the UK and I was in Arizona. And then I had this energy pushing me to one side, almost as if a magnetic energy. And my friend said to me, what are you doing? I said, it's not me. It's an energy pushing me. He said, shut up. So he pushed me back, and then the energy pushed me back. And it was this to and fro between me and my friend and this energy. And it was so weird. And he was like, this is crazy. And after that was it. I was just hooked on meditation. I was hooked on this kind of idea of there's a higher power and there's something bigger and greater than what we are. And I just continued to meditate.
And define the process. What type of meditation did you do? Was it just breathing and clearing your mind? What kind of meditation?
The first one, I now know that my friend threw me in at the deep end, because we did a meditation called the Merkaba meditation, which is where you close your eyes and you're visualizing the different colors of like the chakras and sending those energy into the 2-star tetrahedron, which is like the Star of David. People will know what the Star of David is. So it was a really advanced meditation, but I didn't know that at the time because I was just responsive, or just I had no preconceived ideas. I was just there. So he guided me through it. The second one was more of, I'd say, a traditional kind of breathing and grounding meditation. So they were the first 2. And ever since that, I was just hooked on meditation, and I can get into meditation really easy. So I don't know whether it was the right place, right time. I don't know whether it was Sedona. I don't know whether something happened to me. I don't know what it is. Maybe I'll never know. But I know from that day when I had that meditative experience that shaped the whole rest of the next 7 or 8 years, bringing me to where I am now. Which leads me into the question you asked me about, and if you want to go back to that, we can, but leads me into the question about plant medicine. Probably 2 or 3 years into this spiritual development and this spiritual path that I was on, I kept hearing about plant medicine. I heard people like Tim Ferriss mention it and a few other people on podcasts. And I was like, this is interesting. People keep mentioning it and people are saying how beneficial it is and how it can help them. So I looked into it, and then I read a book by James Fadiman called The Psychedelic Explorer's Guide. I think that's it, but it's definitely by James Fadiman. Yeah, Psychedelic Explorer's Guide. And that said about how to do plant medicine in a safe way. So it talks about the setting environment that you're in, the mindset going into it, and all the ways to do it in a safe way. So I kept getting the pull to do it, and I thought this is for me. I did my very first experience, and I took a very small dosage, and I had a great experience. But the most powerful one actually was last year when I took a big dose of 4.5 grams of mushrooms, which is quite a high dosage, and I just had a really amazing trip, very challenging, but also very transformational. And that was with my wife. We did it together, and that was super powerful. So I think what I'd say about mushrooms, whether it's mushrooms or any other form of plant medicine, is if you are going to do it, make sure you're doing it in a safe way, and that you know what you're getting into, and that you probably have somebody that's got experience with you that's done it before. They call it a sitter, somebody to sit with you and guide you through the process. And just make sure that you're in a good mindset when you go to do it. And I think everybody should maybe give it a go and experience it. But whether it is for everyone, that's not my place to say. And obviously, if people do it, it's at their own risk. And I'm not advocating it. I'm not promoting it. I just know that it's helped me, and I know it's helped a lot of other people as well.
And then what are you saying? Like, what did you experience? Like when you say it helped you, what did it do specifically?
I think the first time I did it, it made me realize that we put a lot of emphasis on stuff that doesn't matter. We worry about stuff that doesn't matter. We spend so much time anxious about the future or worrying and regretting about what we did in the past. Hence why I say I'm all about being present and living as presently as you can. I think the first experience showed me that don't worry about stupid stuff that doesn't matter. Because again, for a long time in my life, I was a worrier. I used to worry about a lot of stuff, and I've pretty much put that to bed now, the whole worrying thing. So I think that was the first one. The second one, well, this wasn't the second one. I've done a few trips, but the second one that I spoke about, the big one that I did last year, that one, when I went into it, I actually set an intention. I said to the mushrooms, I said, all I want you to do is show me my purpose. I just want you to show me my purpose, what I'm here to do, because I've been battling back and forth with that and really trying to get grounded in what am I here for? What am I meant to do? What's my mission? And I asked the mushrooms before I ingested them. And I went through this crazy, like 6-7 hour trip of really getting connection to my wife and realizing that we've got this deeper connection on a deeper level, on a more soulful, spiritual level that almost can't be broken. I think that was the big highlight from the first portion of the trip. Getting towards the end, I had a big, powerful message that said to me that you don't have to take on other people's pain. And I mentioned this earlier, that I've often taken on other people's pain and embodied that, and it's been a detriment to my own well-being. So that was the second, towards the end, the second big takeaway. But the third big one, I was lying in bed and I was almost coming out of it, and I was like, right, I'm ready for this to end now. And then I thought to myself, I still haven't got this message of what's my purpose. So I asked again, I was like, what's my purpose? And then as clear as day, it hit me that my purpose is to bring a child into this world and to have a child with my wife. And that was the message. It said to me, you're going to have a child. And it was even clearer than that. It said, you're going to have a daughter, and your daughter is going to be more stronger and more powerful than you. And I just broke down into tears, and I told my wife, and she started crying as well. But it was just so clear. I could see it. And I think that's the power of whether it's mushrooms, or you can obviously have the same experience with marijuana or LSD, or some people do ayahuasca or DMT, whatever it is. I think they can unlock this stuff that's inside of you or is around you that you may already know it's there, but you just need it unlocking, and they can show you messages and maybe paths to go down. And then I think it's ultimately up to you how you process that information, just the same as you get information from a book, or your listeners are going to get information from this podcast and value from this podcast. It's how you put it into your own life and how you add that to your journey and you navigate through life. That'd be some of the big things that happened. In terms of all the other stuff, what people might know about, I've experienced all that as well. So the geometric shapes, the psychedelic kind of images, walls moving, all of that stuff as well. But for me, yeah, that's cool, but that's not why I've done them. I've done them from more of that deeper level of trying to understand myself and try to be the best version of myself and be my truest self and stand in my truest self as well. So that's all the developmental work that I've done is all about that. It's how can I grow every single day and step into who I really am and live and fulfill my purpose so that I step out of this world a better person than when I came into it.
Gotcha. And then did your wife, you said you did it together. Was it just the same time? Or did you communicate during the journey, during the trips? Like, how did that work?
Yeah, we that was the second time that we'd done it together, but not on that kind of scale of the dosage that we did. So that time we were together, we sat side by side in our living room, and we were both having experiences and we were both getting similar messages. But then I had to remind myself, and I think Sarah did as well, that yes, we were tripping together, but we're both having separate trips. And that's the thing. If you do it, to your listeners, if they do it with someone else or with a group of people, you've got to be aware that person's energy or what's happening in that person's trip could potentially affect your trip as well. So I think for people, my advice for people starting out would be to do it on your own, or maybe with somebody that's going to guide you through that process that hasn't ingested whatever that substance may be, that can guide you through the process. However, my wife and I, Sarah, we wanted to do it together. That was the whole kind of idea that we had. And we had a really memorable experience. And it was also beneficial because there was a couple of times where we both maybe felt the trip going maybe a bit dark or down an avenue that we didn't want to go. And we was able to pull each other maybe more into the light and more into that positivity. And some people may want to step into the darkness, but at that point, I didn't want to go into the darkness. I just wanted to have more of a positive, purposeful, uplifting trip. Although there were some challenging moments and I definitely shed some tears, but I know some people do want to do it to step into the darkness. And I do now know that whether it's mushrooms or whatever, they can take you to that place if you want to go there.
Yeah. And see, for me, I've never done this, so forgive me if I'm asking ignorant questions, but the background I come in is no drugs, right? No drugs, no drugs, no drugs. Like now, when we grew up, marijuana was a drug. No drugs, no drugs. Now, because the governments can monetize it's the greatest thing in the world. Let's cure cancer. You'll be 3 inches taller. And I do believe, like cigars and marijuana, I believe there's a lot of medicinal benefits. I'm not saying there's not. I'm just saying everything we're told sometimes comes through a skewed filter of money and greed, right? So when it comes to drug use, I really have no personal firsthand experience, just what I've observed through others. I've seen people take trips on LSD and mushrooms and they almost kill themselves or other people. And I've had other people like you, they're like, oh, the shapes, the colors, everything's happy, right? So when you did that with your wife, did you have like a babysitter or someone to keep you from doing anything crazy or harming yourself?
No. And this is why I think the mindset is so important. The two biggest things, and I think anyone that's got any experience and people that do this from a medical standpoint as well for research purposes, they would tell you that the two most important things are the set and the setting. So the set is your mindset going into the trip, and the setting is your environment that you do it in.
Okay.
Every time that I've done it in an environment where I feel calm, I feel relaxed, I feel safe, and I feel at ease. I still don't think, even after I'm probably I've done 5, 6, maybe even more mushroom trips, I don't think that I would do it in, say, like a festival or something like that. I just wouldn't, because that's not how I want to do it. And also, I believe that it's medicine. It's from the earth. It's God's put those mushrooms there for us to use, and that they have that medicinal purpose. I don't think they should be used as, that's just my opinion. I don't think they should be used as recreation. The same goes with marijuana to some extent. And I know a lot of people use marijuana in a recreational way. But for me, I feel like we should use them for teaching and for medicine and for guidance. So I have more respect for it than to say, oh, I'm going to go to a festival and I'm going to listen to the pumping music and take it.
Yeah.
So the setting, I've always been in a relaxed environment. And then the mindset, if you'd have said to me before I went to Sedona, oh, Ali takes like even half a gram of magic mushrooms, I'd have been like, no way. And I don't think I would have been in the right mindset anyway. And I think that might have led into maybe a quote unquote bad trip. I don't think there is such thing as a bad trip. I think you might have challenging trips that challenge you. And I think if you do have one of those, that's again why it might be important to have a babysitter or a guide there with you. But for me, I knew when I was going into them, I'd done a lot of work on myself prior, and I was in a very positive mindset. I'd also done a lot of meditation, a lot of breath work, had this spiritual awakening. So I was in a good place mentally. My advice, if for someone that's not in a good space mentally, would be to not do it unless you're going to do it in a medical environment where you've got a medical professional with you that's going to guide you through the process. But people can just look at the research. There's a lot of research being done with psilocybin mushrooms, with LSD, and with DMT, and I'm missing one, which will come back to me. MDMA. That's the one I was looking for. So there's a lot of research being done with those particular compounds, with people that have got PTSD, with people that have schizophrenia, mental issues, and a lot of the more so than bad, like a high percentage of the research is positive. But that's done in a controlled environment, in the right setting, with a guide, with the right dosage. So yeah, I think if you are going to experiment with this kind of medicine, make sure that the mindset is on point and that you're in a great environment, in a good setting. But that still doesn't guarantee that you're going to have a positive, uplifting experience.
Yeah. Let's shift gears a little bit, because you talk about mindset a lot, and that's so true. And leaving someone after 7.5 years, you have to be in the right mindset. And you obviously, there's time that you were thinking and it brought you to the point, but then you want to be prepared for when you meet that spouse, or like you said, your soulmate. And it sounds like you had the nice guy syndrome, where you were a really nice guy, you were a people pleaser. So what did you do to change? Because being a quote unquote nice guy isn't a good thing. It's not a healthy thing. We live in this man condemning, like every guy's a misogynist, and we're like evil to have a penis and testicles, right? And to be alpha male. But that's not true. That's not how we're made. That's not even how nature works. But because we're conditioned in most countries, we're even led through school as men by female teachers in the young ages. And we're just basically taught to be geldings. Just listen, obey, bow to women. And I think men and women are different, but equal. I think similar, but not the same. And the nice guy syndrome is something myself, it sounds like you, and so many men struggle with, because our society is just pounding our mind saying we're wrong for being a male. So how did you break that cycle so you could have a healthy relationship with Sarah?
Yeah, I think for me personally, that overcoming of the nice guy syndrome has not really changed, and probably until the last couple of years. And I'll touch on that in a second. The biggest issues for me were, being a nice guy, worrying a lot, and also that chameleon, that disassociation. I think they were the three big issues that I had. But what does that ultimately boil down to? A lot of that to me boils down to not standing in your power. So for so long, for my whole life and my whole adult life, I'd not stood in my own power, in my own strength, and stood up for my own beliefs. I'd been a pushover. I hated confrontation. And to some extent, I'm still not a massive fan of confrontation, but I'm a hell of a lot better at it than I was 5, 10, 15 years ago. So I was always pushed over. I was always kind of walked all over. And I think in that previous relationship, although it was a long one, 7.5 years, I think I was walked all over by that person. And that's not that she was a bad person, not at all. She was not a bad person. But I just folded every time there was confrontation, because I've always been a people pleaser, because I've always put other people before myself. I was like, no, it's okay. When really I should have just stood in my power and just stood up for what I believed in. And also, when you're standing in your power, that's being yourself. A lot of people think that if I stand up for myself and I stick up for myself and I be a man, if you are a man listening to this, a lot of guys think that that's being someone else, but it's not. It's being yourself, and it's being true, and it's being masculine. And I feel like I've had these strong feminine traits my whole life. So when I ended that relationship, it was probably the first time in my adult life where I'd actually stood in my power, which led me to, when I got with Sarah, I felt more at ease, and I felt as if I could be myself more around her and be who I really wanted to be. But also we had so much in common. We shared a lot of the same interests, and there's so many different factors to it. But I think that was a big thing. And then at the the middle of 2021, I started working with a psychologist because I felt a bit stuck and a bit lost with my career. And she helped me thrash a lot of this out. She pointed out those 3 big things that I mentioned to you, the not standing in my power being the big one, but the chameleon aspect, the people pleasing aspect. They were big standout things that she picked out. And ever since that work with her, I've been working on this stuff. And I'm a lot more confident now when it comes to standing in my power. I'm a lot more myself now than I've ever been. And I think that's the best thing you can do. The best thing you can do in this life is be your truest self. And then you attract all the goodness into your life, whether that's success or financial stuff or abundance or the right relationship or the right friendship groups or the right people. I truly believe that when you are being yourself, that's when all the amazing stuff happens in your life.
Now, what kind of exercises or what kind of habits did the counselor work you through to break free from the nice guy syndrome?
Just talking, just asking questions. Because this is another thing that I've learned.
No, hold on. When she's asking the questions, though, you got to learn to be real, right?
Yeah,
to express what you're really feeling. So It's not just talking, because that's a chameleon right there, right? We're talking about answering truthfully and honestly, even when it's super uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think because of the training that individual had, and maybe not just the training, the experience, but also we connected on a deeper level. You know, so sometimes if you're working with a professional or a therapist or psychologist or coach, sometimes you don't connect on that deeper level. And I think we had that kind of rapport and that connection before we even started working with each other professionally. And I think she asked the questions and she dug stuff out that I did not expect. So because it was so shocking and awakening, I couldn't really chameleon. I couldn't really lie about it, because I was like, wow, this is like really hitting deep in the heart and deep in the gut, that I've got no choice but to tell the truth and be myself. But also I was paying her a lot of money. I don't know, like that shouldn't be a thing. But I think if you're working with someone and you're paying that person money, and I've made this conscious decision. It wasn't like she asked me to, oh, do you want to work with me? I decided to start working with her. So why would I waste that time and that money and that energy if I wasn't going to tell the truth? So she was asking these deeper questions, and she uncovered this stuff that I didn't expect. And then that just made me like go back and think, oh yeah, right. Yeah, I do remember that. And yeah, this has shaped who I am. And then it's just about me making the conscious choices when these situations arise, to not slip into old Ali, to slip into the real Ali, and stick up for myself and be in my power. And it was interesting. I don't believe in coincidences, and I do believe everything happens as is, or happens for a reason, however you want to look at it. But literally after 2 months of working with her, I had a friend, and this is the same friend that I went to see in Arizona. He he sent me a message, and it was like quite offensive, and he was saying a lot of things that I didn't believe in and I didn't agree with. And it was just really off the cuff. And I was quite shocked by it. Maybe he was in a bad place at the time. And old Ali would have been like, "Oh, it's okay, mate. Don't worry about it." I was like, "No, I'm going to stick up for myself." And I sent a long WhatsApp voice note back. I was like, "I don't agree with what you're saying. Look at all the stuff I've done for you and what we've done together, etc., etc." And I left it. And Sarah said to me, "Oh, you're going to message him again?" I said, "No, I'm not. I'm just going to leave it." I left it and left it. Old Ali would have caved, and I'd have just messaged him like, "Is everything okay?" I just left it. And a couple of months went past, and then I got a message out of the blue from him, and he said, it was just back to normal. Sent me these messages, and then we're closer and stronger than we've ever been, even though he's the other side of the world to me. But we're close and strong like we've always been. And I think if I hadn't have stuck up for myself in that situation, and I hadn't have done this previous work, then it might have gone in a different direction. So that's an example of how that work with this psychologist had helped. And also she helped push me into what I'm doing now, which is more aligned with who I am and what I want to be doing, as opposed to when I was in fitness. I enjoyed it, but then it started to grate on me, and I started to lose the love and the passion and the mojo for fitness. Hence why I closed my gym and stepped away from that last year.
All right, yeah, let's talk about that. So you're newly married, you have a gym.
No, I've been married for 5 years, 6 years this year.
Yeah, but no, I'm saying, but still, it's still relatively newly married. You're married for a couple years. Is my timeline right? You're married for 3 years. Then you decide to close the gym.
We were married for 2 years, and then I opened the gym, and then my wife Sarah came and worked for me at the gym, and then we ran the gym together from 2017 to 2022. And then we left the UK in September last year, and I'm currently in Mexico.
Yeah. So talk about that, because you didn't just affect your own life, you affected hers. So how did you guys come to the decision to sell the gym? Why did you sell the gym, and how did you get to Mexico?
Yeah, I think this is all aligned with being who you are, doing what you want to do, doing what you're passionate about, following your dreams, following your goals, following your aspirations, and ultimately following your purpose. And I think the gym was an interesting one because I think that I did it to prove a point to myself, but also to prove a point to others. I think it was the next logical step after working for a health club and being an educator and then running my own personal training business. I think the next logical step for most people in that industry is to open your own facility, whether that's a gym or a studio, whatever the case may be. But also I wanted to prove a point to others that, look, I can do this and I want to do it, and prove to myself that I could do it. So I did that, and it was just a real roller coaster of an experience, because I started off with a business partner and he basically nearly bankrupted the whole operation. He wasn't who I thought he was going to be. We managed to get him out of the business, and then we had like lots of financial struggles and ups and downs, and then took on another investor in the business. And the whole time was turbulent. And then obviously COVID hit, and we had these lockdowns and closing the gym. So when it got to 2021, I was like, look, I'm fed up with this. And we'd always had this passion and this dream of traveling. We'd always enjoyed travel. And the only thing that was holding us back from that was the gym. However, for 14 years, all I knew was health and fitness. That's all I'd ever done. From 20 years old to 34 years old, that's all I'd ever done. So I didn't know any different. And for the first time in my life, I didn't know what the next step was, what I was going to do next to make this dream a reality of traveling and working at the same time. So that's why I decided to work with this psychologist to help thrash that out. And then I formulated a plan to not only exit the UK, but do something that I could do remotely. And I'm now life coaching for men online and helping men to discover their purpose and live a life of fulfillment. And it's a lot more aligned with what I want to do and who I want to be, but also it brings me more fulfillment. And I think that's the key thing. But what I want to point out about this is how we made this happen is that we put an end date on it. We put a deadline on it, and then we took action. And I think that's the key thing. I think without a deadline, this dream is just a pipe dream, and you can say you're going to do it, but until you have a deadline, that was the key thing. And that was one of the first or second sessions I had with the psychologist. She said to me, look, you need to put an end date on this, which is what my wife and I did. We put an end date of December 2022. We said by the end of 2022, we're going to be out of the UK and we're going to be traveling one way or another. And we did it 2 months ahead of schedule. And I think when you've got that deadline, then you can kind of reverse engineer it and you can start working towards that. So we did everything in our power. We sold all of our stuff. We looked to close the gym and sell the gym and get out of that. We put all of that in motion. And then we got to that end point of the 30th of September where we said, right, we're going to close the gym on the 30th of September. And then a month later, we flew to Puerto Vallarta in Mexico and started this new life of traveling and working remotely. So that's kind of how it happened and how it all came about. But the biggest catalyst was the fact that I'd lost my passion, lost my mojo, lost my love for health and fitness, and it was no longer lighting me up like it used to. And I think when you're in that situation, and this is my guidance and advice to most people, is when you're in that situation, when you feel stuck and you feel a bit lost and you feel like you've lost the passion, you have a choice then. You have a choice. You can either keep on going through the motions and living that same Groundhog Day, or you can say, no, enough's enough. I'm going to step away from that and I'm going to do everything in my power to make my dreams a reality, which is what I'm doing now.
That's awesome, my friend. Now, as long as you have internet and electricity, you can probably work from anywhere, or even if you're doing a lot of coaching, cell phone service, you're good to go, right?
Exactly.
Nice. Now, how are you trying to stay still? Like, what do you 3 months here? Are you just winging it, a month here, 3 weeks there, 8 months? How are you scheduling your life now?
Yeah, it's been a journey of adventure. I'd say winging it, to be fair. I'd say winging it. So we had our first month booked. We spent a month in Jalisco. And then since that, we've just been on the move, mainly staying a month in each place. I'm currently in Chiapas, San Cristobal in Chiapas, Mexico. And this is our 7th state. So we've done a fair amount of traveling. In 5 months, we've been to 7 states. But it's been amazing. It's what I've always wanted to do. And going back to being present, like I mentioned to you right at the start, David, I just feel so present. And a lot of people have been saying to me, oh, Ali, 5 months in Mexico, that's gone so quick. And personally, I don't feel like that. I feel as if I've been here for years because I feel as if I've been so grounded, so present. And also I feel fulfilled doing what I'm doing more so than I ever have in my life. And that's why the time doesn't feel like it's gone fast for me. I feel as if it's gone slowly. And that's the power of being present. So yeah, we're moving around, taking it each day as it comes. Yes, I've got a loose plan and me and my wife have got a loose plan. Here for another month. We're heading actually to Cancun, to the Yucatan region for the last month on Friday. And then we're off to Costa Rica for 3 months. And then who knows after that?
Nice. Very nice. I'm happy for you, my friend. So what are tips? Like practical tips. People listen all over the world, all different situations. Let's say they're not in a situation where they can liquidate everything they have and travel. They got kids, they got responsibilities, right? And not that you can't do it with kids, but it does take it to the next level of difficulty. But what are ways to stay present if you're working in an office space or if you're independent and traveling the world? What are ways that you found help you stay present in everyday life?
It's a good question. I think the first one has to start with gratitude. I think if you're happy and grateful in each moment, that can lead you to being more present and just being in general, just being present, being yourself, living life as it should be lived. I think gratitude's a big one. So if you can start your day with, it doesn't even have to be 3 things. A lot of people say 3 things that they're happy and grateful for. Just wake up and just say, today I'm grateful for X. Could be grateful for waking up, grateful for your spouse, grateful for your partner, your kids, whatever. I think gratitude is something that really helps you to be grounded in the present moment. That's the first one. Super, super powerful. The second one I'd say is something that we all have, but is so underrated and underutilized, is the power of the breath. Breathing is the most important part of health and well-being. We all do it, but we all take it for granted because it's so automatic. But the great thing about breathing is you can put yourself in the driving seat and you can control it. And research and science now shows that when we control our breath and we're focused on our breathing, that can impact our whole physiology. So if you can be in an office environment, for example, and you're feeling stressed or overwhelmed, or maybe the boss has just shouted at you, or you've got a deadline to meet, just ground yourself in 3 deep breaths or a couple of deep breaths, just in through the nose, out through the mouth. And you'll be so surprised at the impact that just having or taking 3 deep breaths can have. It grounds you in that present moment. It relieves a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear, a lot of stress. And the breath is just an anchor point to the present. That's why in meditation, it's used all the time, because it grounds you in that present moment. So that would be the second one when it comes to being present. And then the third one I'd say would be developing the skill of self-awareness. And I do believe it is a skill. I think a lot of people aren't aware, never mind self-awareness, they're not aware in general. For whatever reason, there's a plethora of different reasons why people aren't self-aware and why people aren't aware in general. We have a lot of distractions. We have a lot going on in our lives. We lead busy lives. However, I do believe that everyone can develop self-awareness. And this is a superpower. If you can become more aware in general and are more self-aware of everything, of what's going on, of where you are in space and time, of your fears, your worries, what you want for the future, your dreams, your aspirations. If you can be more self-aware and you can develop self-awareness, I believe that can bring you more presence as well. That can lead you more into the present moment. They're the three big ones.
Yeah, no, I think those are great. Very, very great. Thank you for sharing that, Ali. So let's do this. We went through your birth to today. Is there anything between birth and today that we missed, or any kind of concept or thought you want to share with our audience before we transition? We kind of talked about where you are and where you're heading, but before we make that final transition, is there anything we missed in your life, or any kind of closing thought you want to leave with our listeners?
I don't think so. I think the big thing that I just want to point out is that you briefly touched on it, and we've obviously spoke about it with my story, that I think the trauma is a big thing, and people don't realize how much trauma they have. And it doesn't have to be this big trauma. It doesn't have to be what we'd call macro trauma. We can have these micro traumas, whether it's just getting bullied at school, or maybe the teacher spoke to you in the wrong way, or your parents locked you in the room, or whatever it may be. We all have these traumatic experiences, and a lot of the time we just bury them. And I think if you really want to grow and you want to develop into the best person and you want to live the best life, I think that we have to unpick and unpack some of these traumas. And I'd say the last 3 to 5 years, that's what I've worked heavily on. And it's almost like lifting that lead vest off of you, or lifting a huge block of weights off of you, when you really do unpack this trauma. And I'm not saying forget your trauma and just eliminate it from your life, but you've got to process it. And if you don't, this will show up in your adult life. And I've only really learned about this in the last 3 to 5 years. But when you do learn about it and you do unpack and process your trauma, it can have a huge impact on you, a huge effect in a positive way, for sure. It may be challenging, but that's the whole point. The whole point of life is to step out of your comfort zone and get challenged, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's always worth it at the end. At the finish line, each mission we go on, it's worth it. Well, man, thank you so much, Ali. If somebody wants to get a hold of you, what's the best way, especially when you're on the road? What's the best way for them to reach out? Social media, email, website? What's the best way for people to contact you, my friend?
Currently on social media, so I'd say Instagram or LinkedIn, and it's the same handle on both platforms, or on all platforms. It's just Ali West Coach. So my name and then coach on the end. ALIWEST COACH. That's it. The people can find me that way. Send me a DM, reach out to me. I always reply. And if any guys out there listening want more help on the coaching side of things, then I can help as well with that. So I appreciate you for having me and for allowing me to share my story.
Oh man, it's been great hanging out with you. It's been great taking this journey together. I look forward to staying in touch and hearing more about your adventures, man, of you and Sarah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Oh, so ladies and gentlemen, You just heard from our friend, Ali West. Check out his information on social media, his website, keep up with his adventures. Men, reach out, contact Ali if you're feeling, I have these same struggles. Or, hey, I want to learn more about finding that purpose and living free. Connect with Ali. Let's take it to the next level. And for everybody, share this podcast with your friends and family. Go back, listen to it again. And like our slogan says, don't just listen, but do what you know you need to do. Repeat it each day so you can have a great life in this world, but most importantly, in eternity to come. So I'm David Pasqualone. This was our friend, Ali West. Ali, again, thank you, brother.
Thank you so much.
Yes. And ladies and gentlemen, oh, thank you, man. And ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you in the next episode. Ciao.
The Remarkable People Podcast. Check it out. The Remarkable People Podcast. Listen, do, repeat. For life. The Remarkable People Podcast.